everybody. Welcome back to the Cosmic Weather Report. My name is Kyle Buller, one of the co-founders here at Psychedelics Today, joined by Ren Butler and James Moran. So really excited to have you two here to chat about the December archetypal weather and patterns that will be emerging.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you very much, and great to have you join us, James.
Thank you so much.
All right, Ren, do you want to kick things off?
Okay. Well, I hope everyone is having a safe and interesting journeys out there. Emphasis on the safety. Okay, let's see here. Back into practical mode. There, can you see that? December 4th?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. So the one of the dominant influences for December and for the next several years and for the last 9 months or so is the Saturn square Uranus. We've talked about this before. This is always in the background, and there's no week when this isn't a major influence in people's sessions. So some of the major qualities is a sense of tension, because Saturn represents our fearful, more cautious, conservative, defensive sides within us, and Uranus is our desire for freedom, breakthroughs, experimentation, change. And so there's a kind of a pressure between those two archetypes, and we can see this in society in the continued extremism and the sort of polarity between the left and the right and so on. In sessions, there can be back and forth alternations. We can feel like we're failing, we're stuck, we're losing, and then suddenly we're in a transcendent phase, and we realize that the feeling of constriction was actually coming out of our psyche. It was Uranus was helping us to face our Saturnian pain and woundings, and then we're in a breakthrough, a releasing of that. So it can be back and forth. Saturn Uranus also encompasses the issue of responsible set and setting. And this is going to continue to be an issue. Saturn tends to drive home its message over and over. Stan once said that everyone seems to have to need to learn responsible set and setting for themselves. Hopefully they won't make too many mistakes. But if you read LSD psychotherapy, he lays out a very well thought out, experienced and seasoned set of protocols that maximize the benefits and minimize the risks in this work. And most people in this field are probably don't have that ideal situation set up, but we need to sort of work toward those. So, it's very easy to enter non-ordinary states. That we talk about this in the Groff breathwork. You can just encourage someone to do deep and rapid breathing, and in 20 minutes, they're in a holotropic state. That's the easy part. The skill is in helping people through difficult impasses, helping them resolve their sessions. The focused body work is an important part of it. The physical contact, if they ask for that, is an important part of it. It's important for the sitters to stay calm, to trust the process, and just to allow the client's own inner healer to direct the material. And the only way we can gain that trust is by doing our own sessions. I have lots more to say about this particular Saturday, but I'll turn it over to James.
Sure. Yeah. So glad you kicked it off with the Saturn Uranus, because that is very predominant this month. The Saturn Uranus square is with us. Like Ren said, it's been with us for some time, and it will continue to be with us. But in December, it goes exact. With the retrograde motion of the planets, they come in and out of exactitude of the alignment. And so this month is one of the months in which they go exact. So we can kind of feel it. It's really interesting. As the two approach exactitude, it's as if the issues related to those two archetypes and tension, just kind of the volume, as they become closer to exact, the volume goes up in our culture, and you can see it more. One of the ways that Saturn Uranus shows up in collectively is Saturn is associated with, just like Ren outlined, like tradition, conservatism, like maturity, groundedness. And then Uranus is associated with the thrill, the breakthrough, the uncertainty, the freedom, the excitement, spontaneity. And when the two get together culturally, it can show up. Uranus is associated with innovation, the breakthroughs of innovation, technology. And Saturn is also associated with consequences, kind of the karmic fruits of actions and consequences. And so when the two get together, we oftentimes see like the consequences of innovation, of technological innovation. And one of the examples we can see now is as they started to come closer in alignment, there was the investigation into Facebook. And there was this recent podcast with Joe Rogan and the two experts in social media, Daniel Schmachtenbacher and Tristan Harris, in which they talked about how social media is, how basically social media is looking to garner views, which means the things that are incendiary kind of light up the part of the human mind that wants to know more. And so those have an uptick and an upregulation, and they show up more in the feed. And then there's all types of bots and AI that basically just call on the extremist news and push it out there. So it makes people go down rabbit holes, basically, which is, this person is so extreme in this way, and this person is so extreme in this way, because they've gone down separate rabbit holes, but it's the same brain, same firing of the same system. It just got caught on different hooks in the social media kind of attention grab. And then on top of that, the Saturn-Uranus combination is itself a bit polarizing because they're just such different archetypes. I mean, they're almost like opposites. Like Saturn is constriction, constraint, caution. Uranus is freedom, recklessness, rebellion. And so to have them in tension there, we can see how we're really facing that now. And that can show up, that we're facing collectively, and that can show up in your psychedelic journeys. As it can show up in a number of different ways, like, for instance, the ways that Ren outlined, or for instance, like the sudden is Uranus, and Saturn is associated with, like, it could be the sudden, like the sudden break from the past. Saturn is associated with the past, or the sudden break from tradition, or there's the sudden return to simplicity and tradition in the past, or the sudden maturation, like suddenly experiencing a leap of maturation, of responsibility, of realizing like, I will actually feel more free if I step up my game in terms of maturity. Another way it can show up is, one of the ways that is possibly one of the more profound ways, is to see that the polarization that's going on in the world is actually a projection of our own. Like when we see something outside, it's ultra conservative, or it's ultra liberal, it's ultra polarized, to whatever my perspective is. When we do psychedelic therapy, we're in a room with sitters. We're not engaged in the external culture, but yet those boogeymen are going to show up just as strong, if not more strongly, which goes to show that those boogeymen are aspects of our own psyche that's getting projected outward. So the great part there is that in the holotropic state, the healing intelligence gets to reconcile those energies. The healing, we don't have to go out there and change somebody else, or get kind of like into a tight spot out in the world. We can actually have the inner healing intelligence reconcile those energies inside ourselves. So the Saturn Uranus, great way to start. And shall we look at the rest of the aspects for that Saturday?
Sure. I'd like to say a little more about Saturn Uranus. Great points, James. Really, really good points. James is absolutely right. In this work, we become all the parts. We have all of those archetypal vectors within us, and gradually everyone faces everything. We could say that everyone contains everything within them. And, you get in touch with your inner Donald Trump, for example, and you may, this would certainly decrease your desire to act that way in the outer world, in your outer life. But the motivating emotions, which many people would say would be, selfishness, self-centeredness, greed, and so on. Just, some people's take on him, are inside of everybody. So it's really important to become all the parts. The Saturn Uranus reminds us of the sort of foolishness of ideas like heroic dose. I don't know who coined that term, and I understand the desire
to maybe.
Yeah, probably the desire to break through. Groff was born with a Saturn square Uranus as well, and he makes the point over and over that the most important breakthroughs happen through systematic work. We can't do everything in one session. It's you do a bite-sized session, you get a good resolution, you live your life as happily and responsibly and make a contribution to society as you can, and then when you can do another session, you do another session. It's a series of those well-integrated sessions that leads to the most healing. That's how we really break through the negative side of Saturn, not by one time explode through everything, So we have to take Saturn's limits seriously in order to overcome Saturn's limits in our consciousness. And again, just super briefly, the most important protocols is, don't do sessions alone. Have at least a sitter there. 2 sitters is ideal. A male female dyad is the best. Eye shades and headphones are preferable to other ways of doing it. They maximize the benefits, as I said, and minimize the risks. We're actually in the final month of Saturn conjunct Pluto. We talked about this last month, but we use a 15-degree orb. Saturn's now moving away from Pluto. We are in that for December, the final month of about 3 years. And there can be a sense of hard labor in the psyche, a sense of the universe really bearing down on us to give birth to a new part of us, and we can cooperate with that bearing down energy. It's really good for deep Pluto and systematic Saturn inner work. There's a tendency with Saturn Pluto to get in touch with darker shadow material, and often it's projected in society. It's called splitting, projecting of our shadow on others. And as James was saying, it's just so important to own and take responsibility for our own shadows and face them in session, so we're not contributing to the total amount of animosity out in society. Okay, a couple other major things that stand up here. So this coming Saturday, or rather the first Saturday in December 4th, is a new moon. You see, the sun and moon are together. That's the new moon. And Mercury is involved. So this is a triple conjunction, and they're all in a 90-degree square with Neptune. All month, the Saturdays are going to be very Neptunian, with the moon and certainly the moon involved with Neptune, and the sun for the first few Saturdays as well. So the sun-moon conjunction, this new moon, can coincide with a little bit lowered energy in sessions. Our vitality might be reduced a little. It's not an unsafe time to do sessions, assuming that you have this support system that we keep emphasizing around you of sober sitters. But sessions can have a little bit of an abridged feeling. They might end sooner. If you really want a major experience, perhaps the Friday or the or the Monday might be a little bit better. On the positive side, all this Neptunian energy is just so wonderful for this work. The moon square Neptune is very oceanic, very yin. There's feelings of gentleness in the universe, a sense of a meaningful, nourishing container within which the healing can unfold. I mentioned oceanic feelings. Now, Mercury square Neptune can open our minds. There can be a sense of understanding the divine, or sometimes people have a sense of communicating with the divine. Obviously, this can be kind of carried away, but it can be deep in our souls, this sense of kind of meaningful relational connection with higher power. There can be a flow of imagery with Mercury Neptune. I have a few more things to say, but I'll turn it over to James.
Oh, great. Yeah. Mercury Neptune, Sun Neptune, Moon Neptune. The new moon is actually a solar eclipse. So like Ren said, the new moons can be a time in which the journey material feels budding. At least that's been some of my experience, and I know some of the experience of our colleagues. And it's like it's not necessarily during a new moon, and particularly during a solar eclipse, not necessarily a time when like the full fruition realization is necessarily there. It's usually like kind of like a more of a beginning feeling. So if there was journeys there, it might be like the beginning of exploring a theme and journeys that would then extend to the full moon, or because it's a lunar eclipse, it could even extend 6 months until the next, since it's a solar eclipse, it extends 6 months to the next lunar eclipse. That's another kind of cyclical thing that happens there. So that's, would you like me to bring in other aspects, or you want to bring in other aspects, Ron?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we have Mars square Jupiter, and we also have Venus conjoined Pluto. And Mars square Jupiter is a feeling, it's actually exact that day, and that can be sort of nice energy and sense of Mars is forceful action. It's like our kind of inner warrior, and Jupiter is the archetype of success. So we can feel that there is a sense of a success, just an optimistic swashbuckling kind of energy going in, and a sense of successful effort, there can be like successful feeling of physicality. You might feel strong, kind of athletic. And sometimes there can be a sense of trying to put a little bit too much on the plate, like get maybe too many things done. Sometimes that happens with Mars Jupiter. But also, since it's a new moon and it's solar eclipse, so is that beginning energy, and Mars Jupiter is also a combination that tends to coincide with the beginnings of projects, like feeling a desire to grow something, a desire to spark something. So maybe a new project, a new idea, a new fresh energy comes in there. The Venus-Pluto energy, I'm sure we'll probably spend a fair amount of time talking about Venus, Pluto, and Saturn, Uranus, because those are the energies that are really kind of almost like predominant, I guess, this month, because the Saturn, Uranus goes exact. It actually goes exact on Christmas Day, which will make for interesting family time. In terms of possible polarization. I love Saturday Night Live loves to make skits about that, like family events gone insane. But yeah, so Saturn Uranus goes exact on Christmas, and then the Venus Pluto is just all there all month, because actually we're entering into Venus retrograde, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But anyway, so that's Venus Pluto as it's coming in during this Saturday. That's the part of the journey that would probably be, it's almost like we began by talking about aspects to Neptune, Sun, Moon, Mercury, aspects to Neptune, which Neptune is very yin quality, a very spiritualizing quality. So that is just kind of given to work with psychedelics. it can be the kind of the high side and the spiritual side, and the kind of the more like lacy, sweet yin side of holotropic experience than the Mars with Jupiter uplifting. The Venus with Pluto is more like the downward vector. Whenever you see, when you're planning journeys and you look at the aspects, whatever the aspects are to Pluto, those tend to inflect the energy that's more like the BPM 3, Groff's basic perinatal matrix 3, which is a little bit more like whereas Neptune is the energy that's more ethereal and associated with light, and it's almost like a Buddha type figure. Enlightenment lifted the heavens. It's kind of subtle and infinite planes and things like that. Pluto is more like, at least I associate more with like the shaman who's dealing with like the snakes and the dirt and the jungle, and the Pluto energy is more messy. That's the more messy side. Like when we go into BPM 3, that's the more messy side of human experience that involves all the powerful emotions of obsessions, powerful, drives, instinctual drives, obsessions, animalistic energies, lower chakra energies. And so when it's Venus with Pluto, that's the classic combo of the abduction of Persephone. I don't know if you know the myth of the abduction of Persephone. Persephone is the most beautiful mortal, or at least half mortal, I think. And then Hades, Pluto abducts her into the underworld. And so that's kind of a classic theme with Venus and Pluto, is Pluto takes whatever it comes in contact with into the underworld, which is basically to say it reveals the underbelly of that thing, the kind of sordid underbelly. And so when it's with Venus, it's going to have to do with relationships. It's going to have to do with love, art, beauty, to some extent, money. These are the Venusian things that we're going to really be kind of dwelling upon for a while, because of this Venus retrograde. And also Venus has to do with what matters, the value, what we place value on, what matters. So yeah, I think that's all I got to say for the moment.
Yeah, really good points. Yeah. So just a little bit more about all these Neptune aspects. They're really conducive to submerging ourselves totally in our inner material. And this is what we want to do when we have the ideal therapeutic conditions. We have sitters who are handling external reality. One metaphor I like to use is, it's like they're on the boat handling the oxygen pump. They make sure the oxygen is flowing, and then we do a deep dive down in the ocean. And, it's important that there's someone that is handling reality while we're doing that. These Neptune transits are very conducive to this kind of total surrender. The shadow side is, our judgment, especially with this Mercury involved, like this Mercury square Neptune for the first, 10 days of the month or so, at least, or more, first 2 weeks, is that, our judgment can be clouded. So that doesn't matter in sessions, but it's just important to remember that, as Groff says, with high doses of psychedelics, we have no idea what is actually happening in external reality. It's total projection. With lower doses, people may feel that they have increased insight or perception or intuition, things like that. But when higher doses, it just becomes total projection. And that's why we rely on our friends, our therapists, our sitters to handle external reality. So if we say, I absolutely must call the Pope and tell him about the benefits of psychedelic therapy, that they say, maybe wait till after dinner. Wait for a few hours and then you can decide. Things like that. James made some great points about the Venus-Pluto conjunction, and it will be an orb for most of the month because Venus is almost stationary at this point, and then will appear to be moving backwards. So it's sort of he mentioned the abduction of Persephone. It's also Beauty and the Beast. It's the lace that James was talking about in some way, and then this sort of more chthonic underworld jungly energies of Pluto. Venus can help us to enjoy the BPM-3 underworld themes. We can find the pleasure, the enjoyment in surrendering to that. And so that can be very helpful. These are very supportive energies for healing sexual traumas in the past, or sexual, misconducts in the past, working through those kinds of issues, or betrayal, whether romantic betrayal or friendship betrayal. And it goes without saying that we need to have responsible sitters here who know what they are doing. And, they give us the total freedom to feel all our emotions, but they don't play into it. They know where the boundary is. They hold that sober space while our psyches unpack. Now, it's very interesting that on December 6th, the moon is going to line up with this Venus-Pluto in this amazing triple conjunction. This will just supercharge the Venus-Pluto themes we were talking about. So powerful emotional and sexual healing can happen under these energies, and we can feel like this is like the powerful feminine, the mother goddess who knows how to give birth to us. This is not the sort of transcendent feminine. This is the one who is down in the trenches, helping us to work through our muck and come out the other side into the healing states. Yeah. Anything else on this date, James, before we look at the next one?
No, that's great. That's great opportunity for, casting the Venus Pluto in the light of healing of the holotropic states. It can be quite healing to the heart, to relationship, to pleasure, sex. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So for people who aren't familiar, people, listening in, it's not unusual, Graf found, for clients to have very powerful sexual feelings at certain points in their inner journeys. And the perinatal layers of sexuality, as we've talked about in other podcasts, are connected with the suffocation in labor. It's a kind of enforced sexual arousal. It's not like a nice, pleasant feeling. It's a very powerful feeling, but it's mixed in with other perinatal elements like aggression and fear of death and so on. And so it's important to let people go through that. And we, don't want to try to limit people's experience, but we just have these kind but firm boundaries as sitters. So December 11th, this next Saturday, basically the same four archetypes. It's Sun, Mercury, Square, Moon, Neptune, as we had involved in the previous Saturday. Extremely Neptunian. There can be visionary and imaginative experiences. Our inner play of patterns and imagery can be very rich and vivid. Again, like always in psychedelic states, but even more so with these transits, our consciousness can be highly subjective. We can be projecting a lot. We probably won't have a real sense of objective reality, and that's where we count on the people supporting us. Yeah, James.
Yeah, the aspects to Neptune are really interesting. That Saturday, the sun goes exact and it's square to Neptune. The moon is there with Neptune. I think the moon maybe isn't exact and like until early morning that day or something like that. But yeah, so the sun is there with Neptune, and then Venus is really tight with Pluto. It's exact with Pluto. Very interesting, because the sun Neptune can be so it can allow us the identity to be diffuse and actually allow for identification with different peoples and different times. It can kind of, it can allow the sun's associated with the soul, the central sense of identity, the I, the me, and Neptune is this diffusive, the infinite planes, the energy of the infinite planes and diffusion. And so there can be this ability to kind of empathize and identify with different identities, basically. And then that is a transcendent energy. And just like we talked about before, the Venus with Pluto exact is like a different than the transcendent energy. It's more like bringing it down into the dirt and kind of developing. I mean, Venus Pluto at its best is unconditional love, because the heart and Venus can have love in the midst of all the muck of Pluto, like the ability to love somebody even when they show their dark side, their jealousy or possessiveness or covetousness or anything like that. So interesting to see how these energies, will show up. And yeah, I think that might be all I have here right now.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's look at the next one.
Let's do it.
So this is the full moon. Really interesting this month. The Saturdays coincide with the lunation. So this is a powerful moment. If you have an ideal support system and you don't have serious medical contraindications or psychological contraindications, these transits tend to be supportive for this kind of work. The full moon, the sun shines its light on the moon's emotions. There can be more of a sense of vitality, of full-bodied emergence of our process. Now, the T-square with Neptune, again with Neptune, makes this these energies very enchanting. They can be visionary, as I said, oceanic feelings, unitive states. Unitive states are essentially one of the most important goals of this quest, of the therapeutic quest, is to reach states of union with the divine and with the entire cosmos. And these are very supportive for that. There can be a luminous feeling. The sun and moon are both connected with light. And Neptune kind of brings out the sacred side of that light, this luminous, ethereal light. Now, Jupiter is also aligning with the sun and moon, sextile to sun and trine to the moon. This enhances a sense of warmth, expansiveness, generosity, the warm rays of the sun and moon shining their light upon humanity. This Neptune can also bring out the sacred side of the sun's light in general, like at the end of a session, going for a long walk in nature with your friends can be, your sitters can be very satisfying. And then moonlight will have this kind of rarefied ethereal quality as well. The Mars square Jupiter is still in effect, of course, for most of the month. As James mentioned, it kickstarts our enthusiasm. We can often feel very eager and excited going into sessions. It can be a little bit hectic at times, but it's a better problem to have because Jupiter amplifies Mars' courage and sort of positive inertia. Venus is just coming within orb of the conjunction to Saturn here. And then it will move retrograde, but it'll bring in the Saturn a little bit more. So Venus, Saturn, Pluto. There can sometimes be issues sort of in the middle of the month here around, loneliness, separation, materialistic compensations that we might employ in our lives as a substitute for love. And it's really important to have a trusting relationship with our sitter so we can reach out and ask to hold their hands if we need to, as we've said, and needs to be resaid. That kind of physical contact should only be initiated by the journeyer, so it's only given when asked for, and it needs to be done with peer supervision. ideally, especially if the only sitter is a male. It becomes dicier, if the client is female. So it's better to have a peer supervision when that is, one of the things that are being available to the client. The issue of professional boundaries can emerge. So under Venus Saturn, we really appreciate the maturity of our sitters. And, when we're in this underworld state, as James talked about, with the fear that can accompany that, it's our lifeline knowing that they're mature, they know what they're doing, they're responsible, and it's just so important. And also, finally, the issue of fair compensation. You may have a friend that wants to sit for you and they're very generous with their time, and maybe you can accept that as a gift the first time or so, but after that, it's good to offer money or like a trade of some kind of like professional service that you can offer them as a trade, or compensation. So yeah. James, any thoughts?
Sure. So that Moon Neptune, it's so fascinating how all the Saturdays this week have Moon Neptune. This month have this Moon Neptune. I looked up that one goes exact at 9 a.m., but that's East Coast time because I'm on the East Coast. So that's a little early in the morning for the West Coasters, 6 a.m. But if on that Saturday, you are journeying at that time, it's the moon aspects are fast. They don't last that long, really, compared to the movement of the other celestial bodies. But it can be really interesting, really interesting to experience that energy. That's like, it's so kind of, it dissolving, it allows us to, in its best form, it allows us to kind of, it's a disarming energy. It allows us to actually let our sense of identification and particularly connection, emotional connection, begin to go out beyond the bonds of our body or beyond the bounds of our body. So it's almost like, like the grass, the animals, the people beginning to feel like that we're kind of, almost like one, sometimes you can feel like you can almost feel the breathing of the earth or something like that. So it's a very subtle, sweet, subtle quality there. And it's just so interesting that it's there every Saturday this month. I'd probably put that as one of the main themes for this month if we're talking about the Saturdays. And then the full moon, like Ren said, it's great. There's, full moons tend to be more, this may be a generalization, but a little bit more what people are looking for in journeys, because there's a sense of actually, like Ren said, like the process is coming out into its fullness. There's a sense that the material is kind of, it's not just hinting, it's actually it's full-bodied. And then let's see what else here. Let's see here, the Venus Pluto. So the Venus Pluto is, what was I going to say about that? Yeah. So just as this month, but actually for a generalization for this whole month, if I was to come up with themes for this month that are just kind of blanket the entire month, that Moon Neptune would be one, but it's a little bit of a lesser one. The Saturn Uranus is a theme, like really a big theme for the whole month. And then the Venus Pluto is a big theme for the whole month. And then because Venus is going retrograde, it's as if whatever we're kind of, whatever Venusian themes we're wrestling with at the beginning of the month, we're going to be revisiting by the end of the month, because it's going to start to go backwards. And that's like a revisiting time, a reconsidering time around things having to do, like Ren said, money, compensation, the heart, relationships, friendships, love, beauty, art. And then also like what really matters to us. What do we really value? And so in terms of the retrograde, like in May of 2020, that was the last time it went retrograde. And it was so fascinating at that time, because what happened was there actually had the Black Lives Matter movement had actually died down a bit. It had kind of decreased in its activity. And then when Venus went retrograde in May of 2020, it just exploded there was 450 protests when it went retrograde in May. And that's a great collective example of wrestling with what, it's like Black Lives Matter. So Venus retrograde has to do with like what matters, what do we really value, what matters. And so that is going to happen collectively again in terms of evaluating collectively what we matter. And then in journeys, it's like a microcosm of that. We are ourselves going to be reconsidering what really matters. What do we really value, particularly in those realms that I mentioned that have to do with Venus? Because Pluto's there, it's probably going to change in a kind of a fiery, transformative way about what we really value and what really matters. Again, friendship, love, art, beauty, money, all these Venusian things. So I think that might be what I have to say about that weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, I would also, as well as what you said, place the Black Lives Matter movement also kind of in the context of the civil rights breakthroughs of the Uranus-Pluto square, right? That was still happening in 2020 that, Rick talks about in Cosmos and Psyche. So it would, as well as the Me Too movement and many other things. So, yeah. So overall, December is easier than November, less stressful. We've had Mars in November lighting up the Saturn-Uranus square, and these issues of these really violent incidents, these court cases that are happening. Mars brings in the element of militancy and aggression and firearms and so on, and sort of angry polarization of the culture wars. It should ease off in December. Sessions maybe feel a little bit easier, less challenging. All that Neptune is a sacred gift to have in this work. Now, let's look at December 25th. So I was just thinking, I don't know how many people actually do journeys on December 25th. If you're lucky enough to do a journey rather than sitting around in a scratchy sweater with your family and stuff in your face to avoid feeling the bad feelings, we'll talk about it a little. But for some people, it's a really happy time. Obviously, there's a sacred feeling that obviously predates Christmas. That's from the solstice, the sense of returning of the light in the northern hemisphere as well. But it's really interesting that there is a moon, Mercury, Uranus, grand trine in the sky that day. And, it's not the most powerful aspect, but it is fun. It is stimulating. There can be a sense of emotional and moon and intellectual Mercury breakthroughs and decompression, Uranus. Uranus electrifies and awakens whatever it touches. So our minds and our feelings with Mercury and the moon. This is a wonderful day for heart-to-heart sharing. And you're not doing sessions. It should be a good time for some family sharing and real deeper feelings with people over your Christmas. The shadow side of Moon, Mercury, Uranus could just be a lot of superficial chit chat. It's very verbal. It's very expressive, and that can either be just every passing diversion, or it can be about things we really care about. Sitter or journeyers might be more vocal under these transits and share more what's happening with them. They might get more insights into their process. And as always, it's better if sitters sit back quietly and don't initiate communication, but only respond to the journeyer's requests. Like they need reassurance, they need something, they need help to the bathroom door, they need a Kleenex or something, or they just need to babble. Moon, Mercury, Uranus can be a lot of kind of gibberish and babble and insights and so on. But if you could be in that mood where you're sharing, but then if the sitter asks you a question, it becomes a much more serious thing where it jolts you out of your subjectivity, and you have to wonder where they're coming from and stuff like that. It's better if sitters stay as quiet as they can. We can get in touch with cosmic humor under this Mercury Uranus. There could be some laughing, some sort of jocular exclamations of cosmic humor and irony. There can be a sort of breakthroughs at the end of the session, where even ecstatic reentries where people are laughing about what they've been through. And again, with that Venus-Pluto conjunction, also part of this, the trine to the moon at least. So sort of supercharged feminine energies here. We talked about this moon Venus-Pluto for, I think, the 6th of December. Here is the feminine that loves us through the darkness, the power of love to overcome the deepest shadow feelings, and to sort of welcome us as newborn souls into BPM4. So yeah, James.
Yeah, Christmas Day. Let's see. The Saturn Uranus goes exact actually on Christmas Day, so that's interesting. And the Venus Pluto is exact via retrograde, because Venus has started to move backwards and has reconnected with Pluto. I mean, just out of pure speculation, it makes me wonder if there isn't some theme going on with Christmas about what really matters, because Venus tends to be associated with pleasure, gifts, money, things like that. And a more superficial interpretation of Venus would be kind of a commercial type Venus. And there with Pluto and in retrograde, it makes me wonder about something like maybe a reconsidering of what matters around presents and Christmas, and actual love versus commercial gifts. And then the Saturn Uranus, that's left to be seen. It's in journeys, again, who will be journeying on December 25th. I don't know. Maybe that's the great gift that one would get if they did journey at that time. But the Saturn Uranus with journeys, especially when it's really tightly exact, can feel a bit, a little bit of a rough ride. That energy between Saturn and Uranus. I mean, at one of its most challenging, sometimes we could have moments where we feel we're going insane. That's a kind of a Saturn Uranus thing. The structure and the freedom from structure, the structure Saturn, the freedom from structure, haven't worked themselves out yet. We might feel like we're going crazy. But again, the inner healing intelligence that knows best, how to integrate these things. And so that's a bit intense there. The Uranus, the Saturn. But like Ren said, in November, Mars, they weren't exact, but Mars was there. And not only that, the sun was there. The sun transited that in November, that square of Saturn and Uranus. Mars transited it. And that was bumpy. We did see a lot of these trials around violence, and we saw a lot of Saturn there in terms of repercussions for kind of spontaneous, unrestrained acts of violence. That's more of a Mars-Uranus thing. And then Saturn comes in as the consequences for that. So anyways, that was, as Ren specified, a bumpy time. Now we're out of that. But we are in exactitude of Saturn and Uranus. So we'll see, we'll see what that brings. It's very interesting to happen on Christmas. But again, just like Ren said, if you go into journeys at this time, the Saturn Uranus, the inner healing intelligence will kind of recalculate the motherboard to reconcile these energies. We don't necessarily have to do it, but we do want to make sure that we've dialed in Saturn, like we're safe, we have the setting, we have the proper support, and then the Uranus can kind of come out, the eureka moment, the breakthrough, the things like that. And sometimes themes come up of rules, boundaries, wanting to break rules, break boundaries. That might actually be the conversation in the journey, that where the new level of understanding comes from. Like somebody, like, for these 4 hours, we're not going to leave this room. And then, like suddenly that becomes a point of contention of like, the boundary of Saturn, and then the desire for freedom from that becomes the conversation of the freedom versus the constraint, and how we're going to do that. Very interesting Christmas time.
Yeah, really good points. I loved your image about the reconfiguring the motherboard. That's a great one. I don't think that just remember, this Saturn Uranus square it's at least a 3-year transit. It's a debate, but in general, the most punctuated moments of the transit do not necessarily coincide with the exactitude of the square, like when it becomes exact. I wouldn't see this as sort of necessary. It's not like going to make people go insane. There are many more stressful transits than that one. But I do agree with what James said, that we want to handle Saturn ahead of time, so we set up our Cape Canaveral so that the rocket can blast off with no logistical problems. And really good points, James, about breaking rules and boundaries. It's just so important to make that commitment with sitters that I agree that I will stay lying down for X number of hours, and you both agree to that, and then the sitters at the same time agree that they won't try to speed up the process, slow it down, or change it. They're going to allow your inner healer to direct the process at whatever speed. When people want to start breaking those rules partway through a session, then that dominates their experience. It becomes an externalized issue, and it usually doesn't lead to positive therapeutic outcomes. So have a good talk with yourself. If you're bringing in sitters to work with you, you have to have a talk with yourself ahead of time, your responsible side, and make a commitment to yourself. I will face this. I will stay lying down. And if you have a habit in your life of bolting and diverting and so on, escaping, you have to grab yourself and firmly commit to breaking that pattern. You're gonna face the material. When you surrender to Saturn's protocols that way, then Uranus has the final word. Then the inner rebel can break through your own barriers in consciousness. You can have therapeutic breakthroughs. That's what you really want. You don't want to rebel against society all the time and the people around you. That just creates an equal and opposite reaction from society. You want to have these rebellions in your consciousness and go beyond the bounds of your own inner limitations. But that means you have to follow these safe protocols. So that's an important thing, and Saturn Uranus will keep reminding us of that issue for the next few years. So yeah, Kyle, any thoughts?
No, it sounds like a very interesting December coming up. And I think I mentioned this in just previous episodes, just how insightful it is to see how these archetypal patterns are coming up. And, the entire time, I'm hearing about all these patterns, I'm just thinking about how the archetypes show up in sessions, and how am I supporting those archetypal themes when they emerge. And just having this language and context, I think, is just really helpful for when you do encounter that. If you're a sitter, you're a therapist, how are you really kind of containing that? So I'm always taking this and thinking like, okay, if I know this transit or this pattern's coming up, like how do I want to interact with that, right? And so yeah, I just love this, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and you're welcome. Yeah, James, any last thoughts on the transits?
I guess as it goes towards, I guess the last Saturday, I think is the last Saturday, maybe the 1st of January. Is the 1st of January a Saturday?
That's the next Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, it just stood out to me because Venus goes retrograde and then Mercury goes retrograde. So something there's some big thing going on as we transition from 2021, 2022 that involves collectively retrospective and also personally retrospective. You got Venus going retrograde and Mercury going retrograde. So whatever it is, I'm excited to see it, and yeah, this is great.
Yeah, thanks for your awesome insights, man. You know, part I think, you know, there's a use, as Kyle mentioned, in, you know, letting you know out there the influences of the month, but it's also an opportunity for us to share our research experience about sessions in general, right? It's kind of like a teaching opportunities to talk about this aspect of sessions, that aspect of sessions. So we hope that people are finding it helpful. Please share your comments after this video. You know, this confirmed what we were saying, or maybe something didn't really confirm what we were saying. We would really appreciate your feedback very much. James, any offerings or classes, things coming up you want to talk about?
I don't have anything currently, but if you go to my website, jamesmoran.org, you can see all I actually am putting up courses, pre-recorded digital courses, the fundamentals of archetypal as a spiritual practice. So that's how to learn how to start your own practice of archetypal astrology. Also a course on this, learning how to plan and understand psychedelic journeys using archetypal astrology. And those are pre-recorded digital course packages that I'm uploading to my website now. So yeah, you can go to my website and find those.
Great that you can reconfigure the motherboard with those for sure. Those will be really excellent. I highly recommend those courses of James. Always good. Always puts a lot of thought and originality into them, and very comprehensive. So if you're listening to this on Psychedelics Today, please, you know, like and share and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And the same thing if you're listening to this on ANN. We appreciate your support very much. Yeah, I don't have any offerings. We're sort of third of the way through my class, and it's going really well. It's a lot of fun. We wish you all a great solstice and Christmas, Hanukkah, Festivus. I guess every session
Happy holidays, yeah.
Every session feels like Festivus for the rest of us in some ways. But yeah, Kyle, I'll let you have the last word. So have a great month, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Happy holidays. And yeah, as a reminder, let us know what's showing up in your world in the comments, and how this is aligning with you. And we will catch you on the next episode of the Cosmic Weather Report for January. So be sure to subscribe to us to stay up to date. And thank you, Ren and James. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Kyle. And thanks, James.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.